Phoenix and the Hummingbird. Story written and created by Jasper BlackLace. Audio by Koushi. History of the Holloway Empire. The Holloway Empire was founded on three things: brutality, loyalty, and progression. If not for Lord Helix Martin III, the empire would have been burnt to the ground 14 decades ago. With the tyrant King Leicester leading a motion to take over each continent and become a world leader and dictator. Most feared him, as they did any mass murderer. He took over 25 of the 36 continents within 15 years of starting the war, with soldiers as young as 16 being slaughtered and heads posted on stakes at the entry of each army base for citizens to fear and obey him even further. Parents of these soldiers were sent their personal belongings in pieces and were forced to torture camps to avoid a retributive move or revolution against the king himself. Leicester killed over a total of 75 million soldiers that were logged in the history books, that is. It could have been a much higher number, not many people would know for sure, even back then. Most of the texts that speak of this war were heavily biased against the king, so numbers could have been very well exaggerated to prove a point, of course. Lord Helix Martin escaped one of these camps at the age of 17 and ran to the nearest border crossing and surprisingly made it to the continent named Hollowtopia. The continent was originally founded by Tarek Holloway about 3 decades earlier and was now under the watchful eye of Merrick Holloway at the time of the war. It was said he took the boy in at the gate and trained him to help fight against the people who took his homeland. A quote from Merrick states, "The boy seemed to want to take revenge, and his anger fueled a man of passion, and this passion I took advantage of, and raised a man of war and hatred. The boy who wept like an infant seeking breast milk became a man who obliterated the dictator and raised an empire, and I couldn't be more proud of the man named Lord Helix." The war lasted 40 years, making Lord Helix 52 when the war came to an end by his hand after making the king's head roll to the floor in a brutal attack with a longsword engraved with a bird resembling a phoenix. The crest was formed by Lord Helix with the blood of the king on a formal document declaring the Holloway Empire will always strive for peace and progression to avoid brutality such as this in the future. I, Lord Helix of the Holloway Empire, raise this crest in my enemy's blood to enforce the passion of brutality and revenge he engraved on me. The future will be about loyalty to our homeland and partners while maintaining the power of progression so that this kind of hatred never rises again. Before moving on, to anyone who's curious, this is what the logo looks like. You will be seeing it on each page going forward. Chapter 1, Reading from Genevieve's Perspective. Being the second in line for the throne, and a female in an empire, just makes you nothing but an image booster or a means to make connections. Not to mention, when you are a woman like myself, we are typically married off to the next best thing in order to make strong connections, or to save ourselves from ruin. In most cases, it's nothing but a waste of time and energy, and the woman is very rarely happy. My case, however, is quite different. My brother and I made a pact once we started training to take over the empire that I wouldn't fight for my spot if he promised me complete freedom and the title of Duchess of Grotopia upon his coronation. He and I both agreed on this, and my father hadn't much of a choice, as after my birth our mother became barren and was unable to carry another child. Ultimately, my brother was his only heir, and I had no reason to fight, even now. The only downside is my brother gave up his freedom for the sake of my own, meaning his recent engagement to Lucinda Atwood of the second largest kingdom in the world, a painful means of regret for me. While Lucinda is known to be kind and passionate to all those around her, her sudden disappearance from the public eye for nearly 7 years was completely unexpected and very mysterious. They are the wealthiest family in our entire empire, even outshining us in jewels and military forces, making the marriage between our two families inevitable in this lifetime. With the brutality of their family history, however, I fear where the alliance will take us in the future. We are meant to meet with the girl's father today to discuss the impact of the marriage and the rules their duke has requested of us, intending to attain his favor. Nora, do you think I'm a tad underdressed for a meeting with father? My dress was befitting of a young woman, plastered with small white and pink daisies dancing around each bend in the fabric as it flowed down my wide hips and cupped my breasts ever so gently. The dress wasn't ugly, however, with our family being considered extravagant and extra, I feel this childlike sundress would be a mere letdown and damage my image as the woman of the night. Your Highness, as it is a meeting with your father, being covered up a little won't do you any harm, Nora retorted crisply and arrogantly while cinching the waist of the dress to give me the silhouette of a young democratic woman. If you say so, Nora, I reply, brushing off her touch and retreating to my vanity to collect my favorite hairpin and place it ever so gently, slightly scraping my scalp to keep my fluffy tuft of bangs from resting in my eyes. Nora calmly placed her hands at her sides and bows as she slowly retreats from the room. Fifi, this woman is nothing but a thorn in my side. Makes me look like a child each day. Why Dad hired her, I'll never understand. I walk toward my copper-colored bird resting on her perch. As I place some bird feed and vegetables into her bowl and pat her head, she lets out a sweet, squeaking sound and nudges me in the hand with her head before devouring her food. What would I ever do without you, Fifi? I then made my way to my bedroom door, adorned in rustic leather and wood. Whimsical flowers and vines streamed down the door, reflecting the light in a variety of directions. While exiting my room, my mind wandered to my brother. He's been under the burden of the throne his whole life. Honestly, being a royal may have its perks, but the pain of being forced to be powerful when it's the last thing you want is sometimes unbearable. Even though I know my brother does very much want the throne, I can't help but feel the fear and love for him that makes my blood pressure rise and skin pale every time I see him now. Making it to Father's drawing room takes about 15 minutes from my room, giving me plenty of time to eye up the new female staff for a future endeavor of the night. Upon arriving at my destination, I can't help but always glare at the extravagance of the hallway leading to the door. It's dressed in navy and purple curtains, and every 3 feet on either side has a small chest-height podium holding a white and pink vase with the same lily and daisy bouquets adorning them. The carpet is a copper brown with mystical golden swirls dancing in a variety of directions and sizes. Good morning, Your Highness. My father's head advisor Markham addresses me as formally as ever, making my skin crawl and making my nerves go from tempered to overflowing. Morning, Mark. Please, just Jenny is fine. I can't stand when you call me that. You know this. I say gently, fixing my gown while simultaneously wiping the cold sweat from my hands. I cannot do that today, Your Highness. Your father would have my head, he says, opening the door for me. There are refreshments already prepared inside. Please make yourself comfortable. Your father and brother shall arrive shortly, he says, ushering me in the room and closing the door behind me. I can't blame him. I usually hide from these kinds of things. However, this one has me utterly on edge. The room is draped in luxurious things, made of marble, wood, and the softest of cushion material that makes me sick. Honestly, my father and his need to be way too extra makes me uncomfortable. Hence my need to avoid these kinds of settings. Once seated at the silk-lined couch and partaking in my favorite tea and snacks, the door begins to open from behind me and my brother walks into the room. He has always been breathtakingly handsome. Honestly, if I wasn't his sister and completely repulsed by the male genitalia, I would tap that. In the most respectful way, of course. His navy black hair adorned in our mother's golden shimmer, and my father's dark blue eyes paired well with his pale skin and delicate features, giving him the perfect balance between beautiful and terrifying. My oh my, is my baby sister actually showing her delicate self today? I guess I owe Parker $20 next time I see him, he says, tousling his bangs and making his way into my sight completely. His official attire is befitting of a king, and the way he carries himself is ever so authoritarian. Does my brother miss me so little he'd bet against his battle strategist that I wouldn't show my face at his marriage meeting? I say, rolling my eyes and finishing the biscuit in my hand and reaching for my tea. Well, you hate formal events. How could I think otherwise? He says, sitting at my left side, patting the crown of my head. In all seriousness, thanks for coming. I'm not sure I can do this without you, he says, resting his head on my shoulder for a brief moment and pours himself some tea. Wouldn't miss this for the hottest woman on earth, brother, I say with a Cheshire grin and glance out the window. Speaking of women, you know, Dad is going to catch on to the new flow of staff soon if you aren't careful, you know. I would pause the rendezvous for a while, at least until after I meet my future bride and whatever requests they've made, he says, changing his giggly tone to seriousness. And it makes me nauseous. I've already cut down to once a week, and you want me to cut down more? Can't a girl have some fun around here? I said, placing down my teacup and sighing with irritation. Fine, I'll pause for a while, even though it might not be that easy with all the new ladies in town, I say, winking as the door behind us opens once more and the loud footsteps of my father make their way into the room. What new ladies? He says in an irritated tone and makes his way to his desk before us, placing down the letter correspondence from the Atwood family. Nothing, Father. She's just teasing me about my upcoming marriage. Judging my intent to be faithful, that is. He nudges my left arm and sneers. I scoff and roll my eyes to the right and pout in his direction. If you say so, womanizer. Enough out of you two. We have matters to discuss, he says, opening the sealed letter and begins to read aloud. Dearest Holloway family, I am writing to inform you that I will not be attending the marriage meeting this week, but rather my daughters will be attending in my stead. Please welcome them as you have welcomed me. All the best, Jordan Malik. What is this nonsense? His daughters? My brother shouts in protest and stands to attention. I'm just as disappointed as you. But can you really be surprised? He's bailed out on all other correspondence and meetings thus far. However, to send his daughters in his stead is still quite a shock, especially sending both. My father sighs in contempt and ruffles his hair in annoyance. I mean, at least he'll get to meet his future wife earlier than expected, I suppose. Not to mention, I'll get to see some hot other daughter I've never even knew about. Sometimes I hate my intense attraction to women. It's terrifying. That's not the problem, Genevieve. The problem is we aren't prepared for their arrival. We don't have rooms set up, and we don't have enough trained staff to accurately assess the situation and make them comfortable according to their expectations. My brother draws on in protest and anger, running his now veiny hands through his loosening strands of dark navy hair. I'm sure we can organize something. We have until nightfall to get their bedchambers ready and up to expectation. I'm sure our staff can handle it all, I say, standing and placing a comforting hand to my brother's lower back and glancing at my father with a kind and encouraging smile. Markham, please come in, my father says, standing to attention. Yes, Your Royal Highness, he says, bowing halfway down, head over his feet in respect. Please inform the head maid of the arrival of 2 young maidens and make it well known that the rooms must be adorned to fit a queen. Make sure it's only competent staff who attend to them." "Yes, sir," he says, raising his head and retreating from the room in a hurry. "Oh, speaking of staff, do either of you know why so many of the female staff seem to be quitting? Is there something that I don't know about?" He says with a pointed look at me and my brother, waiting in anticipation for a reasonable response. "Not a clue," I say, looking him in the eye. My ability to shed bold-faced lies is honestly kind of intimidating, even to myself. If I had a head-to-head battle with myself, I'd be scared. My brother aids my confidence with his bit of wisdom. "I'm not quite sure myself, Father, but I'll look into it," he says, brushing his question off with a gentle smile. "So be it," he says, sitting down and ushering us out of the room. "We have 2 hours. Make yourself presentable." My brother and I rush out the door in our respective directions to prepare for the arrival of the Sisters of the Atwood Duchy. He went to the entryway to formulate a structured welcome ceremony fit for a queen, and me to the kitchen to discuss proper meal etiquette for tonight's meal. "Melody, it's an emergency," I say, bursting through the swinging doors, dressed in mahogany wood with delicate white lines dancing through each crevice, panting with hurry in my voice. "Jen, what is it?" She hurries over, dropping her pink flower wooden spoon into the stew meant for tonight's dinner. My family is very minimalistic when it comes to meals, despite our grand title. We've never been ones for elegance when it comes to meals. "We have to make a meal for the sisters from the Atwood family is set to arrive in 2 hours. I say, bending over, hands on my knees, catching my breath. Not fighting for the throne has gained me the glory of not training my physical self to fight wars and ride horses. It also aids in my extremely poor endurance, considering it's only a 6-minute walk from my dad's drawing room to the kitchen itself. It's embarrassing in moments like this, that's for sure." "Are you saying what I think you're saying?" she says while forcing me onto a silk-covered stool, handing me a cool glass of water. "Yes. We need the best dinner we can muster in that time frame. We need you to do the best you can. Our minimalistic style is not suited for this occasion, I'm afraid." Accepting the water and briskly chugging the contents before making my way to my feet. The sour look on Melody's face says it all. We're out of steak. "Jen, I only have chicken and potatoes in stock. I can do my best with this, however, I'm not quite sure it would be enough." She glances over her shoulder, beckoning over 3 of her young chefs. "James, you're on vegetables. Mark, you're on meat. And Isabella, you're on table duty tonight. We have very important guests, and we have 2 hours to get it done." "We'll try our best, Jen. You have my word." She turns from me, and the 3 others disperse. I rush out the kitchen and make my way to the maids' quarters to find Nixia and Chloe, the best 2 maids under my ladies-in-waiting. "Nixia! Chloe! Emergency!" My voice bellows through the room as I push my way through the same wooden doors as the kitchen adorns. I'm greeted by 2 of the newer members of staff, and my eyes can't help but wander. They both fill the uniform quite nicely. I'm pulled from my perverse gaze as the 2 others run to me in haste. "How can we help you, Your Highness?" Nixia says, tilting her head like a dog, as Chloe catches up just a few moments later. "We need you to stand in as temporary ladies-in-waiting for the next 3 days. Prep your best dresses and pull your hair back professionally within the next hour and meet us by the front doors for the welcoming party. You will be the Atwood family stand-ins for their first visit. Make sure you bring your A-game." I glance down at them with a serious tone and gesture to their chambers at the back right end of the maids' chambers. "Yes, Your Highness," Chloe says, bowing once more as they both run off in a hurry. With my tasks handled, I called for Nora and Penelope to dress me for the introduction. About 1 hour later, I'm bathed, dressed, and ready to meet the two sisters. My gown is a black, low V-cut dress showing my pale skin through a beige-colored mesh covering my cleavage. It's off the shoulder with flowing sleeves, making their way down to my wrists. The corset is dressed with golden threads, and red lace material runs down the bodice to the top of the slim-fitting skirt that reaches the floor. My shoes are a deep golden color with a small bow made of crystals delicately placed on the top of my toes. My makeup matches that of a woman of the night, keeping my infamous title shining. With Nora and Penelope following behind me as my ladies-in-waiting, we make our way to the front pavilion and arrive just in time to watch the two women make their way from the carriage. The carriage was pulled by two of the most beautiful mares I've ever laid my eyes on. The one to the left was a deep brown red reflecting in the sunlight. The hooves were massive. The mane was a crisp golden color braided back adorning its shoulder. The second matched in coat color, however, had a white blaze mark on its head and dark black hair braided down in the opposite direction. When Lucinda Atwood made her way out of the carriage, the coachman kneeled with his hand out, awaiting for her delicate hand to rest on top of his before standing, allowing her to exit. She has a very strong posture, which paired beautifully with her deep red dress, clasping her body in all the perfect spots. It was decorated with white butterflies along the skirt and off-the-shoulder loop look. Her skin shines in the light of the sun, however her beautiful red hair is not to be missed. It's curled elegantly down to her breasts and glows a pure yellow gold as she walks out of the carriage. After releasing the coachman's hand, I notice something strange. He immediately walks off to unload the carriage instead of assisting the second daughter. In his stead, the tall Lucinda briskly changed course and held her hand out to the pale arm peeking out from the shadows of the carriage. Lucinda is gorgeous, don't get me wrong, but the other sister, it took everything in me to keep my jaw from kneeling before her in awe. As her pale hand reached her sister's hand, I noticed her skirt just above the knees. It was a light peach color, covered in all kinds of flowers. The flowers were being feasted on by two small hummingbirds. One was a dark green and the other was a pale blue. As she descended the second step, the more mature-looking bodice came into view. It was also a peach color. It covered all signs of her femininity, paired with a turtleneck. As she stepped down the final step, and she raised her head, I noticed the true beauty. Her completely transparent hazel eyes, paired with her wavy orange hair reaching down to her mid-thigh. While caught in their beauty, both women made their way to the front of the pavilion to introduce themselves. "Your Highness," Lucinda says, bowing her head in a curtsy, with her sister following suit. "My name is Lucinda Atwood, and this is my younger sister, Ophelia Atwood." Her actions and words following the sentence meant nothing to me, as Ophelia's name rang through my head. You have now completed Chapter 1 of Phoenix and the Hummingbird, written and created by Jasper BlackLace and audioed by Kawushi. We'd like to thank you for listening to Chapter 1, and we will see you in 2 weeks. All the best. Love, Jasper BlackLace and Kawushi.